Charlie Sheen says he has been sober since 2017. That is the story he has told publicly for years. He documented his life in a memoir. He took the story on the road, speaking directly to audiences. He reassured the world that his HIV diagnosis was under control. For a while, the narrative seemed settled. But in October 2025, that sense of certainty cracked. Fans began noticing him in Malibu with a new companion, living in ways that felt unfamiliar and deliberately private. Soon after, a podcast appearance reignited attention when Sheen spoke cryptically about a breakthrough drug, a treatment he suggested existed, but was being withheld from people like him. Suddenly, a familiar question resurfaced, louder than before. What parts of Charlie Sheen's story are still missing? And could the answer be the key to understanding the reinvention he is attempting now? Charlie Sheen entered the world as Carlos Erwin Estevez on September 3, 1965, in New York City. From the beginning, his life unfolded at the intersection of fame and unease. His father, Martin Sheen, was an Irish-American actor on the verge of his first major recognition after landing The Incident in 1965. His mother, Janet Templeton, was an artist, trying to anchor a household that rarely found stability. Charlie was the youngest of four boys, raised in an environment where creative ambition lived alongside emotional volatility. In 1966, the family relocated to Dayton, Ohio, following Martin's growing theater commitments. Even as a child, Charlie learned that normal life often paused for auditions, rehearsals, and sudden moves. Away from the spotlight, the weight inside the home was heavier than it appeared. Martin Sheen struggled with alcoholism, sometimes collapsing unconscious at the dinner table. These were not distant memories for Charlie. They were moments that etched themselves into him early and never fully faded. As Martin's career accelerated, particularly after Apocalypse Now in 1979, the family was drawn deeper into Hollywood's orbit, along with its excesses and temptations. Charlie was just 12 years old then, roaming film sets, absorbing the atmosphere, and occasionally sneaking small sips of beer from craft services. It felt harmless in the moment, but it quietly introduced a pattern that would follow him for decades. Fame, pressure, alcohol, and instability blended together during years when he was still forming his identity. By 1974, the family settled in Malibu, chasing both opportunity and sunshine. Charlie enrolled at Santa Monica High School, but traditional education never stood a chance. Hollywood was louder, faster, and far more seductive. By the age of 9, he was already slipping onto his brother Emilio's film sets, watching cameras move and actors transform into something larger than themselves. School faded into the background. His attendance dropped to roughly 1/3. His grades unraveled. Just before graduation, he was expelled. A baseball scholarship to the University of Kansas disappeared, a crushing loss for someone who once dreamed of playing shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. When his parents insisted he complete summer classes to finish school, Charlie laughed, genuinely surprised that school was expected to exist during summer at all. That dismissal of structure would shape much of what followed. At 17, in 1982, Charlie officially dropped out and committed himself fully to acting. He took whatever work he could find, commercials, background roles, small industry jobs, anything that kept him close to the world he already felt part of. Acting was not new to him. He had appeared alongside his father in the execution of Private Slovik at age 9 and worked as an extra on Apocalypse Now in 1979. These were brief experiences, but they left a lasting impression. Classrooms were replaced by auditions. Stability gave way to uncertainty. He wanted success on his own terms, even if that meant risking failure in public. That gamble paid off in 1984 when he landed a role in Red Dawn at just 18. The film, made on a $14 million budget, introduced the PG-13 rating and cast Sheen as Matt Eckert, one of a group of teenagers fighting a fictional Soviet invasion. Production ran from September through December of 1983, and Charlie reportedly earned around $50,000, a significant leap for someone still finding his footing. When the film premiered on August 10, 1984, it became a phenomenon, earning $37.5 million in the United States alone. Overnight, Charlie Sheen became one of the defining faces of the decade, standing alongside rising stars like Patrick Swayze and C. Thomas Howell. Controversy over the film's violence only amplified its reach, cementing Sheen's place in 1980s pop culture. Rather than lean into safe roles, Charlie pivoted sharply in 1985 with The Boys Next Door. He portrayed Bo Richards, a deeply troubled teenager spiraling toward violence. Much of his dialogue was improvised, shaped by stories and emotions he had absorbed growing up. The film premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival in October 1985 and quietly entered theaters a month later. It made little impact commercially, but its raw intensity lingered. Over time, it gained cult status, and Sheen's abrasive edge began to feel deliberate rather than accidental. In 1986, he appeared in Lucas as the popular high school quarterback, a polished, wholesome role that masked growing chaos behind the scenes. That August, Sheen was arrested for assault involving a 16-year-old connected to his then-girlfriend, Kelly Preston. Years later, Lucas would again be pulled into controversy when Corey Haim alleged abuse tied to the production. Sheen denied the accusations, but the shadow remained, and the film's gentle image became difficult to separate from what audiences knew was happening off-camera. That same year, Sheen starred in Wisdom, written and directed by his brother Emilio. The film followed a vigilante bank robber challenging injustice, but the production itself was unstable. Charlie's intensity spilled into reckless improvisation and dangerous stunts. Released in December 1986, the film underperformed, earning less than $1 million against its modest budget. Critics took note of his volatile presence, and in retrospect, it felt like an early warning of the turbulence that would soon define his public persona. Then came a moment that nearly ended everything. In 1986, at just 21 years old, Charlie accidentally shot himself in the arm with a prop gun while filming The Three Musketeers. He was rushed to the hospital, stitched up, and immediately plastered across tabloid headlines. It was described as his first brush with death. From that point forward, recklessness became inseparable from his name, no longer just a rumor, but a pattern taking shape in plain sight. Later that same year, everything shifted with Platoon. Charlie Sheen was selected from a pool of nearly 2,000 actors for the role of Chris Taylor in Oliver Stone's unflinching Vietnam War film. What followed was less a movie shoot and more a sustained ordeal. Filming took place in the Philippines under punishing conditions. Temperatures climbed beyond 120 degrees. Leeches clung to exposed skin. The cast was subjected to months of military-style training that blurred the line between performance and survival. For 6 relentless months, they endured what Stone insisted be as close to combat as possible. Sheen was treated like a raw recruit, sleeping on the ground, pushed past exhaustion, stripped of comfort. When Forrest Whitaker sliced his thumb open during a coconut-cutting accident and blood spilled freely, the danger stopped feeling theoretical. When Platoon reached theaters, its impact was immediate and overwhelming. The film earned $138 million worldwide, won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and transformed Charlie Sheen's standing overnight. At just 21 years old, he received a Golden Globe nomination. He was no longer simply a promising young actor with a famous last name. He was a legitimate star. The momentum carried straight into 1987 with Wall Street. As Bud Fox, Sheen portrayed a young man intoxicated by ambition, drawn into the orbit of Michael Douglas's Gordon Gekko. The film became a defining statement of the era, a mirror held up to excess, greed, and moral compromise. Critics praised Sheen's performance for its mix of hunger and vulnerability. On screen, he was climbing. Off screen, he was unraveling. His cocaine use escalated rapidly, and in 1988, he overdosed at a party and was rushed to the hospital. The headlines intensified, but paradoxically, so did his visibility. Scandal and success began moving in lockstep. That same year, Sheen leaned fully into Danger with Young Guns, taking on the role of Billy the Kid. The production embraced real stunts, high-speed chases, and harsh terrain. During filming, Sheen fell from a horse and broke his wrist. Injuries became part of the process. The film was a hit, and his image as a fearless, reckless action star solidified further. Then came a sharp turn. Also in 1988, Sheen appeared in 8 Men Out, portraying gambler Sport Sullivan in the story of the 1919 Black Sox scandal. The role demanded restraint rather than volatility. He argued with director John Sayles over historical details, pushing for authenticity and nuance. The film did not explode at the box office, but it earned critical respect. It quietly proved that beneath the intensity and chaos, Sheen possessed discipline and depth. By the summer of 1991, Charlie Sheen was everywhere. It felt as though nothing could slow him down. In July, Hot Shots arrived in theaters and caught fire immediately. A broad, unapologetic parody of Top Gun, the film was loud, absurd, and deliberately over the top. Against expectations, it became a global success, pulling in $181 million worldwide on an $86 million budget. Audiences lined up to watch Sheen abandon seriousness and dive headfirst into comedy. One moment stood above the rest, an exaggerated ejection seat gag that turned physical comedy into spectacle. What made it even more striking was the irony behind it. Sheen was deeply afraid of flying in real life, something he would later admit openly. Still, he committed fully to the scene, and audiences responded with enthusiasm. The film opened to more than $10.8 million in its first weekend and remained in theaters for nearly 8 weeks. By year's end, it ranked comfortably among the 20 highest-grossing films of 1991. Though it was a spoof, it reshaped how Hollywood viewed him. Charlie Sheen was no longer confined to war dramas or intense character roles. He was commercially reliable. He could sell comedy. Bigger paychecks followed. Sequels were inevitable. For a brief moment, it appeared he had found the perfect equilibrium between fame and enjoyment. That balance was short-lived. By 1993, Hot Shots! Part 2 moved forward, and Sheen's paycheck surged to $5 million. The stunts escalated as well, including the now infamous alligator wrestling sequence that still lingers in pop culture memory. Away from the cameras, however, his personal life was unraveling. The partying was no longer hidden. Cocaine binges and sleepless nights became routine. In 1992, the situation reached a breaking point when Sheen suffered a severe cocaine overdose. His family intervened. What appeared to be a birthday celebration for his father was, in reality, carefully planned confrontation. Clint Eastwood participated, urging him to seek help. Sheen entered rehab, and for the first time, his addiction struggles were openly acknowledged. Despite the turmoil, the film succeeded. Hot Shots! Part 2 earned nearly $39 million domestically. Audiences laughed. Critics remained indifferent. Hollywood's response was unmistakable. As long as he delivered on screen, the rest was negotiable. Around the same time, Sheen continued courting danger in his work. While filming The Rookie under Clint Eastwood's direction, he insisted on performing his own car stunts. One sequence required him to drive a real vehicle straight through a storefront. It was not a visual trick. The stunt demanded exact timing, careful coordination, and more than 20 drivers positioned to prevent catastrophe. The car had to exit the building perfectly flat to minimize the risk of injury. Despite warnings, Sheen pushed ahead and did it himself. The film earned $43 million, reinforcing his reputation as an actor who could jump seamlessly between action and comedy. It also revealed something deeper, a persistent attraction to risk, even when the stakes were high. In 1991, he took a different kind of risk with Cadence. The project was deeply personal. Set in a World War II military stockade, it reunited him with his father, Martin Sheen, who directed the film. Charlie played a white soldier imprisoned among black inmates, deliberately inverting traditional power dynamics. The story confronted racism, authority, and resistance head-on. The set itself was tense. Charlie improvised lines that challenged officers and hierarchy, unsettling some cast members who felt the balance of the message shifting. Emotions ran high, and the production carried a weight that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. The film received mixed reviews, but it made an impression. Here was a major Hollywood star openly grappling with themes of race, power, and authority, and doing so alongside his own father gave the project an added layer of vulnerability. It felt personal, even uncomfortable at times, and that rawness set it apart. Not long before that, in 1990, Sheen had already tested his limits on Navy SEALs. To prepare, he subjected himself to 2 weeks of grueling training with active-duty SEALs. The underwater exercises were especially punishing. During one drill, he nearly drowned, a moment that visibly rattled the crew. The film went on to earn around $25 million, but critics were unforgiving, dismissing it as a collection of cliches and reckless decisions. Still, Sheen's level of commitment became part of his legend. He wanted to experience what his characters endured, even if it meant brushing dangerously close to death. Years later, television opened a new chapter. In 1998, when Michael J. Fox stepped away from Spin City due to complications from Parkinson's disease, Charlie Sheen was brought in as a replacement. The series needed momentum, and Sheen delivered it. Playing Deputy Mayor Charlie Crawford, he injected new energy into the show, and ratings climbed almost immediately. His salary rose to roughly $600,000 per episode, placing him among the highest-paid sitcom actors of the late 1990s. Over 4 seasons, he appeared in 145 episodes. His comedic timing was sharp, and his unpredictability felt fresh. Producers sometimes struggled to contain his loose, improvisational style, but audiences responded. The show broke into the top 10. On screen, his characters cycled through romantic storylines, most notably opposite Heather Locklear's Caitlin Moore. Their chemistry felt effortless, in part because it mirrored Sheen's real-life reputation. Locklear later recalled that Sheen insisted on strict boundaries during kissing scenes, closed mouth only, no tongue. Off-camera, however, his personal life was unraveling. In May 2000, he was arrested for assaulting his then-wife Denise Richards. He missed episodes. Media coverage exploded. His private turmoil spilled into public view. Still, the production pressed on. In 2001, Sheen won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Male Performer. Spin City was drawing close to 20 million viewers per episode. Few realized that nearly 30% of his dialogue was improvised. Pickup jokes, one-liners, entire exchanges created in the moment. That unpredictability became the show's signature and cemented his value. Then another scandal surfaced during the 4th season. Reports emerged that Sheen had attended a party involving underage girls. A police report leaked. The situation nearly derailed everything. Producers openly debated firing him but ultimately stepped back, fearing the ratings would collapse without him. The incident was quietly buried, rumors circulated, and the show continued. For many observers, it marked the point when the warning signs stopped being subtle. When Spin City ended in 2002, Sheen's final episode mirrored his real-life aspirations, with his character launching a political campaign. Syndication deals followed, and Sheen reportedly earned around $250 million from them. The income fueled an extravagant lifestyle, 7 luxury cars, and a mansion valued at roughly $7 million. On screen, the ending felt optimistic. Off-screen, the spending had no restraint. That momentum carried directly into 2.5 Men. By 2010, Sheen was earning approximately $1.8 million per episode, the highest salary in television history at the time. During the 2010 to 2011 season alone, he made an estimated $178 million from the show's original run, with syndication profits on top. His contracts guaranteed him a share of those long-term earnings, pushing his future income into the hundreds of millions. The series became an engine of money almost immediately. Within just a few episodes, it paid for itself. Networks took the gamble because audiences never stopped showing up. The numbers were staggering. 2.5 Men generated more than $3 billion in syndication revenue. Reruns sold for over $850,000 per episode. One season alone brought in roughly $155 million in advertising revenue for CBS. Distribution deals extended well into 2020, cementing the show as one of the most successful syndication stories in television history. Behind the scenes, however, everything was fracturing. Sheen demanded increasing creative control and clashed repeatedly with series creator Chuck Lorre. By 2009, disagreements turned explosive. Scripts were rejected. Rewrites were demanded. Public rants followed. Production shut down. CBS sided with Lorre. Sheen retaliated with insults and threats, referring to Lorre as an 800-pound gorilla and refusing to return unless he was removed. The feud became a spectacle in its own right. At the same time, Sheen's personal life collapsed again. In 2010, Denise Richards obtained a restraining order after alleging threats. Custody battles followed. In 2016, she sued him for $1.2 million, claiming he failed to financially support their daughters as promised. Court filings described broken agreements and forced evictions. The unraveling was no longer hidden. Yet the money continued to flow, and so did the spending. At his peak, Sheen earned close to $100 million a year and burned through it just as quickly. Reports detailed roughly $2 million a month spent on parties, escorts, and luxury. Around $410,000 annually went to a personal chef. Another $130,000 to parties. Roughly $135,000 on clothing. Even after losing 2.5 Men in 2011, the habits remained. A $1 million car buying spree. A single party costing $30,000. Support payments that once reached $110,000 a month were later cut in half. In October 2010, the chaos finally exploded into full public view. Charlie Sheen was staying at New York's Plaza Hotel when the night spiraled out of control. Porn performers Capri Anderson and Brie Olson were part of the scene. By 2:07 a.m., hotel security intervened and called the police. Inside the suite, destruction was everywhere. Shattered furniture, a damaged chandelier, signs of a violent outburst. Reports described Sheen naked and heavily intoxicated, shouting about Adonis DNA and claiming his wallet had been stolen. The situation escalated to the point that police transported him to New York Presbyterian Hospital for alcohol abuse and psychological evaluation, despite his insistence that he was merely suffering an allergic reaction to medication. Capri Anderson later filed a police complaint, alleging assault and harassment. When TMZ released footage of the trashed hotel room, the story went global. It felt like a line had been crossed. From that moment on, the unraveling was no longer confined to whispers or closed doors. The trouble followed him into public view and refused to stay hidden. Between 2010 and 2011, the explosions kept coming. Sheen was arrested multiple times for domestic violence, including highly publicized incidents involving his fiancée, Brooke Mueller, with reports that he had broken her nose. Then came details that sounded almost surreal. During one police raid, officers reportedly discovered 8 syringes filled with cocaine-laced blood inside his home, an image that seemed to capture, in a single moment, how far things had spiraled out of control. He was charged with misdemeanor assault and completed a month-long stay in rehab. At the same time, Brooke Mueller was facing her own unraveling. In 2011, reports surfaced of her arrest for drug possession and assault, and police later found cocaine inside her home. Each headline made the next one easier to believe. Slowly, the image surrounding Charlie Sheen hardened, no longer just wild or unpredictable, but dangerous. By February 2011, the media storm reached a peak. His ABC interview that month became instant global content, clipped, replayed, and endlessly quoted. His talk of winning spread everywhere. From a distance, it was mesmerizing, even entertaining. But beneath the spectacle was a financial collapse few fully understood at the time. Later estimates tied that period to roughly $600 million in lost career earnings. Once money starts leaking at that scale, it rarely stops in one place. Court filings later revealed nearly $12 million in debt. Support payments were crushing, exceeding $110,000 a month in combined child and spousal support. To keep up, he began selling personal assets, including a sword collection valued at around $300,000. The story shifted. This was no longer just about outrageous behavior. It was about consequences that could not be laughed off. Then his biggest job finally fractured. On 2.5 Men, the problems were no longer whispered rumors. Episodes were missed. Production became chaotic. And then Sheen crossed a line publicly, insulting co-creator Chuck Lorre by calling him a turd. In March 2011, CBS fired him. Warner Brothers estimated the shutdown cost the studio nearly $100 million in lost production. Sheen responded by filing a $100 million lawsuit for wrongful termination. At the time, reports placed his salary between $1.20 and $2 million per episode. Even a brief absence translated into tens of millions lost. The case eventually settled out of court, with reports suggesting Sheen received around $10 million. The show moved forward with Ashton Kutcher. Sheen moved forward into a battle that would never fully resolve. Rather than retreat, he attempted to turn the collapse into spectacle. In April 2011, he launched the My Violent Torpedo of Truth Tour. The first major stop was Detroit's Fox Theater, a 4,700-seat venue. Tickets sold for more than $100. Fans arrived expecting chaos, tiger blood, and a perfectly unhinged performance. What they got was confusion. He was booed and heckled before he could settle into his opening remarks. The night drifted into disjointed monologues, bizarre video clips, and staged moments involving his so-called goddesses. The crowd turned hostile. After Detroit, the tour faltered. Later shows were marked by walkouts and ridicule. Instead of looking untouchable, Sheen suddenly looked exposed. Still, he did not disappear. He searched for a comeback that could outrun the noise. In 2012, he returned to television with Anger Management on FX. At first, it looked like redemption. The premiere drew 5.7 million viewers and broke records for a cable comedy debut. His contract was massive, $750,000 per episode for a guaranteed 100 episodes. But the momentum evaporated quickly. Within 3 weeks, viewership dropped nearly 40%, falling to around 2.4 million. By mid-2012, ratings in the key 18 to 49 demographic had slipped to roughly 1.7 million. Critics pointed to the same flaws again and again, jokes that felt recycled and a show unable to sustain freshness. Despite the money and the headlines, it could not hold its audience. The series ended after 2 seasons. After that, his career increasingly felt like a reflection of his own chaos. In 2013, he appeared in Machete Kills as a drug lord with a heart grenade surgically implanted in his chest, a role that seemed to dare the audience to laugh at the wreckage. Behind the scenes, reports claimed he demanded extra takes, and that filming continued even when he was hungover. The line between character and reality blurred further. In 2014, the story turned darker again. Sheen faced child endangerment charges after his 2 young daughters were found at his home with traces of cocaine on their hands and clothing. He temporarily lost custody. Court documents revealed he was spending roughly $50,000 a month on child support while simultaneously threatening bankruptcy. This was no longer about reputation alone. Children were involved, and that shifted how the public interpreted everything. In 2015, a long-hidden truth finally became the central story. On national television, Charlie Sheen revealed that he had been HIV positive since 2011. He said he had been blackmailed for millions by people threatening to expose his status and admitted paying roughly $10 million over 4 years to keep it secret. When he finally went public, he described the secrecy as a prison and said the disclosure brought relief. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Tabloids accused him of knowingly infecting partners without disclosure. He denied the claims, saying partners were informed after his diagnosis. His physician stated that with proper antiviral treatment, his viral load was undetectable, making transmission extremely unlikely. That same year, the financial collapse became easier to quantify. Reports estimated his net worth had fallen to around $10 million, down from a peak near $150 million earlier in his career. He sold his Malibu mansion at a loss and accepted lower-profile work, including a reported $1 million paycheck for Scary Movie 5, where he openly parodied his own breakdown. He also closed a strange loop with 2.5 Men in 2015, appearing in the series finale. Reports said he earned about $250,000 for roughly 30 seconds on screen. The episode drew nearly 13 million viewers and marked a moment of reconciliation with Chuck Lorre, even as his character, Charlie Harper, was symbolically killed off in a funeral scene that felt both petty and final. Then the timeline shifted from collapse to survival. In 2017, Sheen entered a 30-day rehab program in Malibu. One detail stood out in nearly every retelling of that decision: the intervention from his daughter, Sammy. She told him, "If you don't stop, I won't be able to look up to you anymore." Sheen later said those words broke his heart and finally stopped him in his tracks. That moment marked the point where Charlie Sheen says he finally chose a different path. Around the same time, his body forced the issue. He was hospitalized with severe abdominal pain, and doctors performed surgery to remove scar tissue tied to years of substance abuse and long-ignored medical problems. Sheen later spoke about how close the episode came to killing him and how recovery left him with no place to hide. For the first time, he was forced to confront the damage directly instead of outrunning it. By November 2018, he publicly marked 1 full year of sobriety. Not long after, he made a surprise cameo on The Big Bang Theory, appearing as himself, a small but symbolic return to television that framed him as self-aware rather than self-destructive. That same year, he attempted to reshape his public voice through Sheen's Corner, a podcast focused on conversations with military veterans and discussions around post-traumatic stress. He connected some of those themes to his own experiences preparing for Platoon when he spent time around Vietnam War veterans in the mid-1980s. He spoke openly about hypnosis sessions intended to recover blocked memories. The tone was noticeably different from his past public appearances, quieter, reflective, and at times heavy. Even as he tried to rebuild, unresolved consequences continued to surface. In 2018, his former fiancée, Scottine Ross, filed a lawsuit seeking $1 million, alleging that Sheen failed to disclose his HIV status prior to their sexual relationship. Sheen responded with a countersuit for $5 million, accusing her of extortion and maintaining that she was aware of his diagnosis. Court filings once again repeated a figure that had followed him for years, more than $10 million paid to keep his HIV status private before he went public in 2015. The case was settled out of court later that year, with no details released. It served as another reminder that when fame, privacy, and consent collide, closure is rarely clean. In 2019, Sheen made a public gesture that signaled where he hoped his story was heading. He donated $1 million to HIV research, saying his personal experience compelled him to help others navigating the same reality. It did not erase the past, but it drew a visible line toward accountability and something less self-centered. Then 2025 arrived, and his narrative began to shift deliberately toward the idea of a comeback. In September of that year, he released a memoir titled The Book of Sheen, described as a 368-page exposé. In it, he wrote that fame had held him hostage for decades. He revisited stories of extortion tied to people discovering his HIV status and offered a new explanation for his infamous 2011 breakdown. He claimed it was not driven solely by cocaine, but amplified by a prescription testosterone cream that he said pushed his behavior into overdrive. He also disclosed previously unspoken same-sex encounters during periods of crack addiction, while insisting he never transmitted HIV and rejecting any labels. The book was reportedly followed by plans for a Netflix documentary designed to put his life back into the spotlight, this time on his own terms. By November 2025, Sheen said he had reached 8 years of sobriety. He framed that milestone around fatherhood rather than fame. He described a moment in 2017 when he forgot one of his daughter's appointments, an absence that, he said, broke him in a way nothing else had. In this version of his life, he spoke about coaching his daughters, Sammy and Lola, in school plays and centering his days around family. He shared that his twin sons, Max and Bob, were 14 years old in 2025, and that maintaining a healthy home mattered more than chasing the image he once lived for. He also returned to the stage. His Alive on Stage tour in 2025 reportedly expanded to 50 cities after strong early ticket sales in October and November. Then, on November 18th, a scheduled show in Santa Barbara was abruptly canceled due to illness. Almost immediately, rumors ignited online. Sheen rescheduled the date and stated clearly that it was a temporary sickness, not a relapse, not something darker, just another reminder that the public still waits for him to fail. Weeks later, another headline emerged, this time centered on medicine and controversy. During a December 2025 podcast appearance, Sheen claimed that an experimental HIV drug known as Pro 140 had worked exceptionally well for him, but was being suppressed by pharmaceutical companies. He offered no direct evidence. The claim sparked immediate debate, particularly since his HIV had been described as fully manageable since 2015. Still, he continued to suggest that better treatments existed and were being buried. Even his private life became part of the renewed scrutiny. In October 2025, Sheen was spotted in Malibu with a reportedly younger male companion outside the Hollywood scene. Descriptions framed a relationship as quiet and domestic, with no public displays and no official confirmation. Friends characterized it as stable and positive. As always, the public filled in the gaps on its own. It speculated. It judged. It watched, waiting to see whether this chapter would finally hold or fracture like the ones before it.